have heard people say that incorrectly. One thing that always drives me up a wall is getting incorrected by British people. If those of you know Steve Hostetler, you understand what the term incorrecting means. But and I've heard people like, well, we invented the language. It's like, well, no. First off, no one invented English. English developed over time.
Evolved, from
like
other languages.
Yeah. And plus the fact that according to Melvin Bragg, a British etymologist, there's a lot of artifices in American English that are actually closer to how it was prior to back a couple hundred years ago, 200-300 years ago. And the same thing happens in other countries. Like in Argentina actually speaks a more archaic form of Spanish because they're isolated by mountains and Portuguese speaking people, and they were cut off, so they didn't have the same development. But when they'll particularly, but it's funny, especially when it's a foreign word where it's something that's not an English word that we use in English. And they'll try to correct me, and I'm like, no, dumbass. Like, we're actually saying it the way, like, especially like French words, like the British will say valet instead of valet. I'm like,
yes.
And I've actually got corrected or incorrected on that. I'm like, no, the fucking word is French and it's valet. Whether just because you guys say it wrong or fillet's another one like that.
Fill it. Couple of points. First of all, hi everybody, we're live. We're joining the conversation in the middle as we sometimes do. You mentioned Melvin Bragg, just so everybody knows. I believe Melvin Bragg spells Melvin with a Y, so that's how British he is. So he would know.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned, it reminded me when you mentioned, like, there are certain isolated communities, like in the Americas, that speak a dialect that's probably closer to how that language was spoken in the mainstream a long time ago because they're isolated. It reminds me of, I can't remember, I know there's a community off the coast of the Carolinas that's like that, and I can't remember the name of it.
The Gullah Geechee.
Pennsylvania.
There you go.
Gullah Geechee.
Yeah, but there's also in Maryland, there's a community that lives on, I think it's either Chincoteague or Assateague Island in the Chesapeake Bay, and they have a very similar situation where, like, they are mostly an isolated community that have kept to themselves for for centuries, and they speak a dialect of English that is, like, it's not quite British, it's not quite Scottish, it's not quite Welsh, it's kind of a, if we try to compare it to a modern accent, it's not quite anything. It's sort of its own thing, but it's like a melange of all of them. So
it's weird. My dad, who lived until recently, lived on Hilton Head and became friends with somebody who lived in the island who was native Gullah. Been there, his family had been there for generations and generations, and it just, not for nothing, I mean, they became good friends. But it's just this kind of odd, like, the Iranian immigrant and the native Gullah, who, like, both kind of speak a little bit of a different English.
Right.
Yeah. English is a language that took other languages into a dark alley, knocked it out, and went through its pockets.
Exactly.
Yes. Well,
that's exactly right.
To kind of bootstrap onto CMX example, when my first day of college, my first class, I'm in this computer class. And my lab partner, I'll always remember the guy's name. His name was Li Ming Gu. He was from somewhere in China. And I had my TA was this guy Ted Stremecki. He was from Poland, and they both spoke heavily accented English, and they couldn't communicate with one another because they're both speaking and listening in broken English and listening to broken English, and so they were sitting there both like. I can understand what that guy's saying, and I can understand both of them. So I was translating English to English.
That's great.
Can I say, Joseph, thank you for confirming my belief in the GURPS language system.
The GURPS language system.
The role-playing game has a language system where it's broken to broken, like two people misunderstand the same language, but if you were there, you gave them each a bonus roll.
And now there's just blood trickling out of Steve's ear.
Yeah, blood is coming out.
Edification.
I forgot my nerd specs. Okay, just.
Okay, so look, my knowledge of D&D and Magic and other tabletop RPG stuff is limited. but I remember hearing a while ago that depending on your alignment, which is like 9 different kinds, each one almost has their own magic language.
Yes, they have an alignment tongue.
Yes.
So regardless of where you come from or what your own native language could be, if you're like a lawful neutral character and you meet another lawful neutral character,
you know it.
You will be able to somehow.
Even if they're from another plane of existence, there's and keep in mind, like all political thought, it can be divided into 9 distinct little boxes.
Right. Well, here's the thing about that, though, Nick. As silly as it sounds, the basis of that is actually Church Latin, biblical Hebrew, and Arabic.
Yeah,
because,
I think
that was really the idea that what you were getting at.
I like the idea. I'm not knocking the idea. I just have to wonder what these tongues sound like. Like, how do you speak lawful neutral? Do you just very monotone?
Don't tell me there might be a way to subliminally find out.
Oh, I'll bet it's like Tibetan throat singing.
Does chaotic evil just sound like screamo music? What is chaotic?
It sounds like Ted Cruz.
Sounds like black. Chaotic evil probably sounds like black speech from.
What is chaotic?
I know what the verbal quirk of true neutral is, though. It's the assumption that any argument, no matter how ridiculous, is equally valid on the other side.
Oh, it's the CNN speak. So it's CNN.
CNN speak.
It sounds like you're on CNN.
Like watching a panel of climate scientists.
I just have to. Jeez, my camera's screwing up again.
And here's somebody who depends on the burning of fossil fuels for a living.
Well, see, the other thing too that D&D introduced years ago was the idea of thieves' cant. What they think is really kind of cool. If you think of it, what it really is like a street patois. If you've ever it's just really what is a street lingo, like people that you think about like. And I'm not really a drug person, but if you think about people that do drugs, like back in the day, you had all these code words for all the drugs you would take.
What do you mean back in the day?
Thank God people don't use drugs like that anymore.
We actually.
You see, in places where weed is legal now, they don't need to names
it's
anymore.
It's just like wrestlers don't speak carny anymore because what's the fucking point? Like,
before we branch away,
there's no such thing as kayfabe anymore.
Before we branch away from the weird fictional languages, I just want to say that the guy that I originally heard this from, he asked like in his video describing it, like, what the hell does chaotic and neutral sound like? Just gremlins speak, like with the occasional last slap.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. As a minor thing, like if you ever need to know more about D&D, it's basically like English in that it was someone who went in and robbed everything from a Wisconsin public library.
Yes.
And they just jammed it in.
Is that where English comes from?
That too. Yeah. But like English, it's sort of that mishmash.
The first residents of the island of Britain came over to Wisconsin and robbed the library.
Robbed the library. Not saying time travel is. I'm not saying that there wasn't a circle of stones in a portal involved, but I'm not saying there wasn't.
Hey, knowing those ancient British, there probably was.
No, but I just had an epiphany. If you ever want to, if you're in one of those campaigns and you want to speak chaotic neutral, just do your best that Tasmanian devil impression.
Yes, I mean it would be better than what the fucking evangelical Christians came up with for like speaking in tongues.
Oh, the tongues language, yeah.
Because, it's like you guys have to do better than this. Like,
it'll be chaotic good.
Oh, you just reminded me. There's somebody. She's not on YouTube anymore, but she took her channel name from that. So she was basically making fun of it. Yeah. And apparently Robert Tilton on one of his bullshit things.
Yeah.
Said it sounded like he said Robo Bubba Cunta. So that was her. that was the name of her channel was Robo Bubba Cunta.
I think that was one of the.
Robert Tilton was the best at it. Robert Tilton was is the all. I see all these other people on like religious broadcasts, trying to do speaking in tongues. None of them have even approached the genius of Robert Tilton. He would make shit up, and I mean, you almost believed it for a second. You either believed that he was actually onto something, or that he thought he was saying something.
Well, it's almost like auctioneer too. It's that auctioneer ability, that stream of
that's just unbroken syllables. Just
I have 100. I have 100. Do I have 110? Do I have 110? Do I have 110? I have 110.
Did you ever see though? There was one video of him where he's talking and it sounds like he's doing baby talk. He's like, "Oh, go back, it's like he sounds like Pebbles Flintstone."
Yes,
there was one. There was one because when Joe Bob Briggs used to do his segment on the Daily Show, he would play clips of Robert Tilton a lot for obvious reasons, and there was one that he played that I've never forgotten where it's Robert Tilton and he's doing his speaking in tongues thing, and he's just, going off, just, and he's going off for like 30 seconds, and then he stops and looks dead into the camera and goes, "I love you."
Yes, I remember that.
I was like, wow, that is some bullshit right there. That is a committed con artist.
Or he was talking to the person under his table.
I love you.
Here's a very upsetting realization I came to a while back about these bullshit preachers.
Yeah,
is that they have to be atheists. Because think about it. If they really believed in a God,
that's true.
That and there was reward and punishment. There was hell there for doing things that God wouldn't want. You couldn't go to that level of grift and believe that was true. You couldn't go ahead.
Right. Black's line. Well, I would love to believe, but I think, and that really screws up the belief thing. Just ask any priest.
Isaiah Jane said, Goulash is it. Just when you think humans can't get weird enough. Exactly, Isaiah James.
Yeah. I say that to myself all the time, actually.
And frankly, serious-minded. I think people are capable of a great degree of personal dissonance.
Yes. Exactly. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and I mean, whether they. The thing that strikes me about televangelists, whether they believe or not, is just how breathtakingly cynical they are. Yeah. I mean, it's the most cynical thing you can imagine to go on TV for some of them, on a daily basis, and say, "Hey, if you have troubles, if you're worried about how you're going to pay your bills, send me the money. And then God will take care of you." That's such a cynical thing to know that you're taking advantage of the faith of a desperate person.
But Steve, it's just God wants them to have a private jet.
Exactly.
God demands it.
God demands it.
Now here's the weird part, because I do accept the idea that people can actually get convinced of their own bullshit.
Oh yeah.
So, for instance. If you're familiar with the term bullshido.
Oh yes,
I think I've heard that.
So for anyone who doesn't know, bullshido is basically phony martial arts, which represents much of the martial arts community. Yeah. So there's one of these no-touch masters who uses chi or ki to knock you out and not touch you and all this kind of crap. And he actually took a challenge from an actual MMA fighter, and he got his face pummeled in 90 seconds. And it's it wasn't even close. He didn't lay a hand on the guy. And I'm like, at some point, this guy had to know at a certain point he was full of shit. And then at some point he convinced himself that he wasn't actually full of shit, that he really had some power. Because there's no way. If I know I'm a flim flam artist, the last thing I want to do is go up against somebody who's real, right? Because that's going to expose me.
Yeah, of course.
Anybody who lies to themselves, for example, I don't know, what's his name? Trump.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. If you tell the lie enough to yourself, eventually that belief that it's a lie disappears, and you're just saying what you believe until somebody slaps you with 91 indictments and
And also there is that phenomenon
careful,
of like,
careful, that might give him an excuse.
Yeah.
There's also that phenomenon of even if you retain an awareness that you're full of shit, you get to a point where you've backed yourself into a corner so much. It's almost like a kind of the sunk cost fallacy where you're like, I can't
step off.
I can't admit that I'm full of shit now.
Well, how many of us have told a lie as a kid and then had to keep the lie going?
Yeah.
Because the idea of facing the consequences of telling the truth after lying.
But I kind of like the Tuttle version of it.
I saw an interview with a guy he's now a former flat earther, and he said there was a point where he's admitting that there was a certain point where he realized that it was not true. Like he believed it was true, and then he realized it wasn't. But he was like a kind of a well-known figure. He had a big audience. He was making money, and he was literally like, how can I walk away from this? And so he persisted for like 2 or 3 more years of just telling the lie until eventually it just got so onerous to him, and he's seeing people that were just really wacky out there, and he's like, no, I got to stop.
No, I think he paid off his mortgage is what happened. And then suddenly clarity. I'm with you.
My ex-wife used to say to me, the only reason we're still arguing is because I know I'm wrong. I just want to annoy you.
Yeah.
Well, now a comical example is I just saw the sketch again recently. It was on SNL. It was Louis C.K. And he's making fun of, he gets hired in the cell phone store. He's making fun of the supervisor, and she walks in, and so he's parroting her voice, and she's, so he can't let her know that he's like, this is how I talk, So then he puts up this charade for 5 years, and then eventually she gets him to fess up. She tricks him into fessing up. And then he ends up firing him, but it's like he put up for 5 years just pretending, and
then at the end he pulls his dick out and starts jerking off.
I like the idea that after 5 years working retail in a car phone thing, you paid your penalty. There's nothing you can do to you.
It's like, you do whatever you want to me now.
Yeah. At that point, he does have to go to the next
stripes.
level.
Anyone who's done surface work would say that.
Oh God, no. I know it's got to be worse now. I like work grill, so I don't know, how it is out at the counter, because that's like 2 meters out from me. I work at a diner, but our customers are pretty good. But I can't imagine. We know all our customers personally, so we'll just go over and shoot out the porch light. If they get out of line. I think maybe we need more porch light shooting by, you need to know the person on the other end of the transaction.
You know what you did.
You know what you did. You left that $1 under the water glass.
Why did you do that when I know where you live?
And I got
what
some
are you thinking?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Anyway, it was kind of weird.
Yeah, I've worked at a gas station for 4 years. It's like, I'm sorry. I yes, I can change the gas prices. I'm not authorized to do that. Dude, believe me, I paid minimum wage for this job. Why are you bothering me?
Oh, I just want to say, now that Angel's here, and so we got 9. It brings
alignments.
Alignment, but it brings to mind the collection of mugshots in.
Yeah.
And I've heard a few cool names. One of them was the Shady Bunch.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's the kind of joke that like you wish you had written yourself.
Exactly.
It's so perfect. You're like, oh, I wish I'd come up with that. That's perfect.
A lot of people were talking about like how Trump's photo like makes him look like the Kubrick stare and all that. Which is funny, but the ones that I'm more amused by are the ones that are up there like smiling.
Yeah.
Smiles they know how much money they're
fake mugshots.
Yeah, the fake mugshots because
MTG
solidarity.
Oh man.
Oh, there's gonna be they're smiling because do you know how much money this is gonna make them? Who cares? Tomorrow is another day. There's a book tour and bigot money out there.
Well, Christ, Trump had his up as part of a fundraiser like later that day.
Oh yeah.
Like as soon as it was released, he had that fucking. He was sending out emails.
He had this planned already.
Yeah, of course he did. Of course he did.
Oh yeah.
He said he made over $7 million from donations.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
On the arrest.
My favorite part is I was watching. I guess
almost like televangelist when you think about it.
Yeah,
it'll motivate. They're going to use it to motivate his base, but frankly, I think it'll motivate more people on the other side.
I think his base is as motivated as it's going to get for a while. Beyond the tipping point, which I do want to say, beyond the scary tipping point, I think they're as torqued up as they're going to get.
Yeah.
You just have to.
I think he's got as many as he's going to get.
Many as he's going to get.
The name I came up for them was the Pillage People.
That's a good one too.
And one other thing too, and I actually tweeted this at Trump because he's back on Twitter.
Yeah, funny.
Donnie,
to raise money.
Donnie, who can I turn to? You gave no pardons for Jan 6th. I know you'll jilt me like the others before who saw your numbers on the cell wall. Who 1135-809. Yes. Who 1135-809.
Yeah. Yes.
I saw your number on the wall.
And I give you credit for that because I thought of of course I thought of that song as soon as people started tweeting like his number, I guess you wouldn't call it a prisoner number because he wasn't like a prisoner, but his the number that's associated with his case. The booking number. And I was like the first thing I thought was 8675309, but I couldn't make it work with the song. But you made it work. So congratulations.
Thank you.
We gotta all make sure every doofus goes out and gets that tattooed on their forehead.
Yes, please.
And their big doofusy "I am Spartacus" moment. It'll make them easier to find. It'll make it easy to find when they don't wear the belt buckle. Yeah, please.
Please, all of you choose to die on this hill.
Yes.
Do the world a favor. Go down with this ship. The ship is sinking.
I made a different connotation in my head. I was trying to work out how to do Jean Valjean's prisoner number song, and like talking about how the world is so unfair for just a man who tried to steal an election as opposed to a loaf of bread.
That's good. That's all he did was try to steal an election.
Mr. Shives, is this one of those things we can use our membership for to get you to sing it? Can we contract you to make that?
You want me to sing a parody of a Les Mis song?
To that very thing where you just sit there with the big wig.
Yeah, if I can sing it like Russell Crowe sang it in the movie, I will do it. I have no idea why Russell Crowe chose to sing it like that, but I am very glad he did because it was one of the only things that entertained me about that film. I was like, oh, he's going to sing, and he's going to sing in that weird voice that he's chosen for some reason.
He's going to take on Wolverine and he's going to sing.
He's going to sing at like the upper edge of his register. I have no idea why he chose to sing it like that, but go, Russell, go.
Well, here's the problem though. As someone who's like bass baritone, most like popular songs are sung by tenors. At least for men. And so your choice is either you sing it at the top of your register and sound kind of creaky, or you sing it an octave lower and you just don't get the same power. It doesn't sound right. Mm-hmm. So actually, I usually end up singing women, alto women singers because it's the same, same register, just 2 octaves down.
So maybe they should have just cast an actor who could sing the part in the movie.
Nope.
Instead of saying no, it would be Russell Crowe.
Or as been done before, have somebody else sing it and dub it.
Yes, and lip sync it.
Or the director just be like, don't do that. Just sing it better.
Just sing better.
Try again. Do it better.
Yeah,
your songs are all going to be dialogue.
Why don't they just do? They can just do that. They could have just done that.
They could have turned it into a rap.
Yeah, again, beat Hamilton to the freaking punch.
I remember hearing an interview. I remember hearing an interview with Hugh Jackman where he talked about. Because he did a pretty well received production of Oklahoma in London back like I think after the first X-Men movie came out, but before he had become like a huge star, and And he said that part of their prep for that was in the early stages of rehearsal, they wouldn't sing anything. Like everything was delivered as dialogue. And so he said it was difficult for him at first because they're Broadway show tunes, they have a lot of repetition, like the first lines are, there's a bright golden haze on the meadow. There's a bright golden haze on the meadow. And he said to the director, he's like, well, since we're just doing this like dialogue, can I just say it once? And the director said, no, it's in the script. You say it twice. Find a reason to say it twice. And so it's like
that's an actor's challenge right there.
It's a unique challenge as an actor. Yeah, it's like, why would I say this twice? I need to think of a reason why my character would repeat himself verbatim like this. And that's very
Kubrickian.
Yeah. There's a story from the recording of Moana where the You're Welcome song that the male lead Maui sings in that. That Dwayne Johnson just can't carry a tune. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we're kind of throwing this song out and you're just like talk singing it. And it came out fine because, Dwayne Johnson has a good charismatic talking voice, so it's fine.
You just put some background on him and he's good.
It's well known that The Rock can only sing Elvis.
Yes.
Yeah. He can sing Elvis. He can sing Elvis just fine, but get him outside that and it's iffy.
Well, I wonder if it's like ABBA where he's phonetic.
Well, and you think of it too, if you're anyone who's familiar with Henry Rollins doesn't really sing.
Yeah, he doesn't.
He's kind of a cantor. He kind of chants.
Yes.
But he's awesome, so fuck it.
Yeah.
Christopher Lee. I've always been a little confused between his music and his spoken word because there's
similar.
There's a wavering line there.
I mean, Christopher Lee is metal as hell as well, but he's not really like singing. He's just like he's performing, as it were. Definitely songs, as it were, but it's not like singing, as it were. And then William Shatner.
I was just going to say William Shatner.
Yeah. Well, I was kind of thinking.
I'm a rocket.
Yeah. It's more of a dramatic monologue.
Yeah, it's more of a dramatic monologue. I'm convinced, Steve, that you've totally turned around. You and your friend would have totally turned around in the musical if Mbinga was allowed to speak his dialogue.
Actually,
thank God they did not give him a rap. That's all I'm going to say.
I mostly liked the musical episode.
I remember.
Didn't like it.
Jason was harsh.
Yeah, Jason was very harsh on it. But I do like the because you could tell that Mbenga's actor Babs Olusanmakun was not a singer and was not comfortable singing it. And there's a line that Mbenga has, and when when they're having the conference after the first song, and they're like, "What's going on?" And they're like, everybody was singing, and Dr. Mbenga says, "Even me, and I do not sing." And I'm like, boy, that was from the heart. Like you can tell the actor was like, yeah.
Well, also they also had they went around the table and it's like, I don't want to be a bunny. I don't want to sing anymore. I mean, they picked it. They beat it a couple of times, which is nice.
Yeah. One thing the voices were in the cast, though. I mean, for the most part, the voices in the episode were.
Oh yeah, they were the cast.
Yeah, they did the cast because I mean, what was it, Anson Mount? Like there were points where he was pushing his range.
And again, Pike was the one who was the most visibly uncomfortable. He was like, I think one of the biggest laughs for me in the episode was when Pike says, "Let's just shoot it with a photon torpedo."
Get this over with, end it.
Like the most non-Pike thing ever.
Yeah. Let's just blow it up. I'm tired of everybody singing. Let's just blow it up.
The one thing I think is kind of funny about that episode is how split the Star Trek community has been. Because here's the thing, I started watching it. I got 2 minutes into the singing. I couldn't stand it. I skipped it. But at the end of the day, okay, it was an episode. It wasn't for me. I moved on. I watched the next episode. I enjoyed the next episode.
Right.
There are people, and look, some people loved it, right? There were people who, really, really hated it, who are just like incensed, and they're just like,
how could they do this?
I'm like, hey, and my favorite is like, hey, Chuckle Fucks. If the idea about singing in within Star Trek, like Passage to Eden.
Oh my God! Yes.
Well, this was
that's worse than this, or that's better than this. Yeah, come on.
This should have just been a Q shit episode.
Oh yeah.
But no, as an aside, if you really do, I would really recommend going and getting a supercut of the La'an Kirk stuff. There's no singing, which is good because it could have been a song. But I really, really, this episode moved a lot of shit, and so it is worth swallowing it if you can. To just get the characters.
Yeah.
The
thing I like about Felix's point about the history with Trek, though, too. Let's not forget that we spent an entire episode that contained the line, "I am not a merry man."
I'm not a merry man.
Yes, exactly. Well, and the other thing, there's a couple of points. First of all, Star Trek is a TV show. Star Trek is not a sacred thing. Star Trek is a TV show, and the people who make the TV show are allowed to try things. You know, it's not like there's no idea that I can think of that they could pitch for an episode where someone could say, "Oh, we can't do that because it's Star Trek." That you would just automatically throw it off the table. You know, in terms of like format stuff, like you could say like, "Well, what if Pike just straight up just murders everybody?" Like, okay, that doesn't quite work. But in terms of like a musical episode, a Western episode, a fantasy episode, or whatever, like no, you wouldn't say, "Well, we can't do that. It's a Star Trek show. It's a TV show, and it's a sci-fi fantasy show, so they're allowed to try things."
Hell, they did a Western theme thing in the original series.
Yes, absolutely.
That was not exactly above the top 10, though.
Tales of the Gun. No, but
they've done Western episodes
in the 70s. It was like they have Nazis on because they've got the uniforms from Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah. Or there's a disease running that makes everyone horny, and they did in 2 different shows.
They did it.
Actually,
they did the same episode twice.
Well, actually, I was
and anatomically correct.
It was like the 3rd episode of Next Generation.
It was the 3rd episode.
That's right.
Voted on it.
And the other thing is, and I mentioned this when Jason and I reviewed it, and I bring it up again in I wrote a full season review for season 2 of Strange New Worlds that's going up this coming week. I'm editing it now, and I make the same point of because I liked the musical episode for the most part. I liked the crossover episode with Lower Decks for the most part.
That was great. That was really good.
But even if those episodes had not worked, even if I thought they were both just complete misfires, I would still have been glad that they tried it.
Yeah.
Because I like that they try things. That's one of my favorite things about Strange New Worlds. They're willing to go for it and say, let's do a musical episode. Screw it. Let's see how it comes out. And I would much rather have a show that tries things occasionally, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, versus a show that's afraid to try anything.
I have 4 words for that. Who mourns for Adonis?
Yes.
I mean, they had literally had Apollo the god.
The literal god Apollo in the episode.
I have 2 words for that. Upskirt.
So speaking about them like making bold choices for the first Next Generation movie, not only do they kill Kirk, they freaking kill the Enterprise. They have to build a whole new one for the next movie. That was a bold statement. Like, okay, we're gonna make a bunch of new Star Trek movies, and the ship crashes in the very first one.
We're clearing the decks. New ship. No more Captain.
Especially
Kirk.
when you consider why it's because of all the things that could have brought it down. The freaking Duras sisters.
The Duras sisters take out the Enterprise.
I think there was a bit more of.
I even think
a widescreen bridge.
I don't even mind. Listen. I don't even mind that all that much, because it's basically saying, hey, look at all the episodes where the Enterprise was seconds away from being destroyed. They were bound to screw up one of these days. It just happened to be today against the Duras sisters.
Hey, Nick. Actually, they destroyed the Enterprise twice.
Oh.
Okay. In the Search for Spock.
Right. They did. Yeah.
And I remember.
I think Nick's point was that it was the first TNG movie.
Oh yeah.
Very first.
We're wrecking the ship.
but still, if you think about it though, like I remember like watching, the Search for Spock and just being like, oh my God, they blew up the Enterprise.
That was cool.
Fuck.
Well, it's sort of like the producers were saying, sure, you can have Spock back, But guess what?
Did I ever tell you?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, did I ever tell you about the time my life became an episode of The Golden Girls for a few minutes?
Please, I would love. That's
So
that's a hell of a setup.
Were you
What a hook.
Blanche? Were you Blanche?
I was not.
Okay.
I was at a convention, and this was in a mall. So I was just sitting there at my table selling my books, and people needed to still be able to go about and do their shopping, so you didn't have to pay to get in, only to visit certain booths where like there were voice actors and stuff. This has actually worked well for me because I got a lot of extra foot traffic from people who didn't even know there was a convention, that there was some comic book thing. And it was funny to me, the reactions of like the older generations. There was this one old man that he was just stunned by all the comic book crap. It's like he didn't realize there were that many different comic book stories in the world. I'm like, what rock have you been living under? But then there were these 4 old ladies, or like older. 3 of them were in their like late 60s, maybe 70s, and one was in her 90s, almost certainly the mother of one of the other 3. Like I said, 1-to-1 Golden Girls.
There we go.
And they stopped by, just being polite. One of them's like, okay, so what's this all about? And she's just being polite, and she's just humoring me. Unfortunately, I made the mistake of leading with the plot and not the story.
Nope.
I led with a more sci-fi technical elements, and not just that it's about a disabled woman born during a flood. And so like they got it, but when the oldest one is like, what did he say? And like the daughter explains to her, he says, thousands of years in the future. Oh, don't tell me about that. Really set off. Like instantly triggered.
Wow.
Instantly overwhelmed. And
She has to live in the now.
on Steve.
Yeah,
it
look,
was a funny reaction
yeah.
because like it was clear it wasn't just my work that set her off. Is that she was overwhelmed. She was overwhelmed by all the loud, colorful comic book crap that she was surrounded by.
Oh yeah.
And I just felt really bad for people of like her age who clearly don't like this stuff, but they pretend to be as like a way to connect with their grandkids or great grandkids.
Yeah.
And the least we could do is make that a little easier for them by not making pop culture so goddamn impenetrable. Because like there was a time not long ago at all, just like a decade ago, when half a dozen actors reprising their roles from other movies appearing on screen together, the Avengers could be considered impressive. Now that's Tuesday. Now, it's like, okay, now we got like 40 characters all continuing their arcs in this one movie. Now we have everybody in the universe on screen, like in the same frame. And it's like, well, how do you get bigger from there? Multiverse story. And you notice how everything is a damn multiverse story nowadays. I was so relieved that Superman and Lois didn't do a multiverse season the third time in a row.
Hey, Nick, one thing to remember too about the woman, she's in her 90s. When you start talking about 1,000 years in the future, when you're in your 90s, you're worried.
Your future is today.
Can I make it to next Tuesday?
Yeah.
I understand. But it just made me realize, like, now it's no longer enough to just keep a track of like Robert Downey Jr. and all the other actors. Now you have to keep up with all the different versions of a character and all the different people who have played them over the years and all these different universes.
I think you've just explained why Barbie did well.
You know what?
Because I mean, we're right now we've cul-de-saced it into like you said, impenetrable. And and it's like, and I do want to doing new things because I want to be in a fandom and not a museum. But,
that's a great way to put it. That's a great way.
I come up on my lawn. I'm of a certain age where I'm taking more pills than I realized I should. But because I did take more pills than I should, I'm now taking more pills than I should. It's a thing. I want the kids to come up on my lawn. I want to mess with the lawn a bit and see what they do because I want them to surprise me. But it's like I really don't want to go. I just need a movie where Gilligan ruins a rescue attempt, or Tom hits Jerry with an anvil, and I'm kind of done.
That's a lot of how I felt about the Flash movie. Because like the parts of the Flash movie that were about the Flash, I thought were pretty good. I mean, it didn't blow me away. I wasn't like, oh man, this is a masterpiece. But it was like, oh, I'm interested in this version of the character. You know, Ezra Miller is a fucking nightmare in real life, but they're giving a really good performance, and this version of the Flash is really, it has potential, right? And it's like, but they didn't make a Flash movie. For the first movie, for the Flash's first solo movie that's called The Flash, it's all about Batman and Superman and General Zod, and it's like, what happened to the Flash's movie?
Yeah, I just want to see him take on Polka Dot Man and shit.
Couldn't they just do one Flash movie and then do the multiverse thing? Because like, you know, there's other stories. The Flash has been around. This version of the Flash has been around since the 50s. The Flash as a character in general has been around since the 40s. There's stories other than Flashpoint that you could adapt for movies. Like, you don't have to do Flashpoint.
Even if they did Flashpoint, they could just keep a focus on the Flash himself.
Yes.
Because the whole appeal of Flashpoint is that he went back in time and tried to fix things, but he wound up also changing the past because it was like a ripple effect. So everything got fucked up. And that's an interesting setup because there's like, how does this character survive in this horrible new world that they've created, where they weren't even born? That's fascinating. And they could have just stuck with that.
And that is the emotional core of the movie.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And whenever the movie gets back to that, it works more or less. But it's like there's this whole stretch, you know, from when they meet the Michael Keaton version of Batman to when they have like the big fight in the desert with, you know, the Kryptonians, where it's like, this has nothing to do with the Flash. This has nothing to do with the emotional core of the movie. Barry's dilemma of, you know, I wanted to save my mom, but I can't save her without changing everything. And now I have a choice to make. Like, that's what the movie's about. And for like an hour, it's about completely unrelated stuff. And you're like, what happened to the movie about the lead character and his mom and, you know, wanting to.
So we could have just recast with Ashton Kutcher. And done Butterfly Effect is what you're telling me.
That's true. Yes.
Slap that guy. I think we found a dilemma. I think we figured out our Flash 2 movie is Ashton Kutcher comes in.
Yep.
And then we all think, are we being punk?
Yeah. Why is Amy Smart in this? I haven't seen her in forever.
Wait. Serious mind. I don't think we can hear you. No, we can't.
Oh shit, we can't. Yeah,
wow!
I see your hands up.
Okay, how about now?
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's my headset for some reason. I'm hearing you through here, but okay. Well, I was wondering like why.
Anyway,
like, no one's letting me talk. But
sorry.
So here's the thing that I think is, you know, realize it's really, I don't blame the studios so much as I blame the fan base.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. So obviously, you know, the Infinity Saga ended, you know, with the Endgame. It was an amazing movie, blew everybody away, and then people were like, well, how are you going to top that? I'm like, no, you don't. And actually, Marvel has actually been smart. If you look at Phase 4, they kind of went back to the beginning again. And when I kept trying to remind these people who were complaining, there's legitimate complaints about the movies and the TV shows, fair enough. But when people were just like, they're almost angry at the smallness of it. And I'm like, do you remember Phase 1? Do you remember Phase 2? We didn't start with, you know, the Avengers. We started with this big buildup. So we're introducing a whole lot of new characters. We have to do the same setup we did before. And so there's some crossover, but it's like, I have people complaining about that. Like, why aren't there more crossovers? Because why aren't these other people involved at this? You know, I'm like, because there's other shit going on, and
that's not their story.
And that's not the story. The story's not about.
I mean, frankly, I have serious problems with some of the way the stories have been structured, and some of the, I do think Secret Invasion was a mess from a story point.
Really?
But I appreciate and to actually contrast this, frankly, to Star Trek, that not everything is always, and Secret Invasion is actually kind of a bad example in this case, but it is not a world-ending stakes issue.
Well, here's one thing that I love when series do this, when you'll have like the main story that's big and spans so many entries, and then after that peaks, after the big climax, we wind down. Like there'll maybe be one extra story with a smaller scale, but it's like one last do or die situation for these characters. You saw this a lot like with cartoons in the 2000s. Like they'd have all these seasons, and then they'd have the final episode essentially be a movie that's like its own self-contained story, but has like really high emotional stakes and advances the characters forward. I love that when stories do that, when they have a really good epilogue.
Yeah.
The one thing I was upset about was that in the MCU, that Benedict Cumberbatch and Robert Downey Jr. didn't look at each other, and one didn't say to the other, "No shit, Sherlock."
What was it?
I think that would have been
No shit, Sherlock.
just a perfect
No shit, Sherlock
moment.
Been perfect.
No shit, Sherlock. I would love. I mean, I agree.
Or just Elementary. That would have been
Elementary.
Yeah.
I would love to see, and I know it's like it probably won't happen anytime soon. I mean, even not even taking into account the strikes and the fact that nothing's happening right now. But even if that was not a factor, like just because of the way everything is, the assumptions that are in place by the people who decide which movies get made and what to do next and what to spend money on, it's probably not going to happen for a long time. But I would love to see like just a 2-hour Spider-Man movie about Spider-Man, where Spider-Man's the only hero in it, and there's like one villain, and it's just about this thing that's happening in New York, and it's not end of the world or multiverse or you know what I mean?
Well, and he's missing a lot of appointments. He keeps missing appointments.
Okay, so you got me thinking about something else, something that was like really special. But actually, I'll let him finish first.
Let's see Matt go.
Sorry, I was just thinking something that Steve would enjoy. That actually me and my girlfriend were talking about, and after having watched, and if you haven't seen it, it's fucking hilarious, and everybody should watch it. Weird.
And the Weird Al movie, yeah,
exactly.
Yes, it's great. It's great.
It's great. It's fantastic.
I want to. I don't have Apple TV though.
It's terrific.
It's not on Apple TV. It's actually the Roku channel.
It's on Roku channel. Yeah. It's free. It's free with ads.
Yeah. So you can, if you have any other device other than Apple TV, you can get the Roku app onto it and watch it.
Okay, cool. I'll check that out then.
But my point was that it was like an hour and 45 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect, like we sat down and it was it was 9 o'clock and we're like, we want to watch a movie, but we also didn't want to be up till midnight.
Right.
This is fantastic.
Here's another thing too, as far as like series pacing, or in the case of like mere movies that are serial having pacing. So Babylon 5, obviously I love it. It's my favorite show. But one of the things, good example. So you have the episodes that lead up to the episode Severed Dreams, and Severed Dreams was the big giant episode, major conflict, major battles, and then the next episode is not a bigger episode. It's Ceremonies of Light and Dark. It takes it way down, and it's all about rebirth, and now it's a very personal story. Now all the big stuff's aside. We've dealt with the big stuff. Now we're just going to deal with the characters as individuals and as people. They just went through the whole bunch of trauma, and now they're kind of rediscovering who they are and what they're going to be.
Well, because Straczynski understands the concept of climax and denouement.
Right.
And because it was serialized storytelling, he could take an episode and do denouement.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but after the denouement, then you would get into what people would, because he was doing 22, 24 episode seasons, what people would start calling the filler episodes again, which, had to move the story forward, but were away from the main story arc.
And that's part of the problem of having 6-season and 10-season episodes. Six season is fine if you're doing, if you are doing just one storyline.
Yeah, right.
Like as Steve has pointed out, you did that really good video a while back about how a 10 episode season is really awkward, and it's not that it can't be done, but so far it hasn't been done well.
It's really tough to keep it up for 10 if the main story is the subject of all 10 episodes. Yeah,
that's right. Whereas and maybe 22 or 24 is a little bit much, because you guys said you get those filler episodes. So maybe something like 15, 16, 18 episodes might be perfect, because it allows you to do you could have a main story that's the through line, but then you have sub stories that are contained. Like you have 3 to 5, 3 to 6 episodes on the secondary stories that are the primary stories for those episodes. But then they reach
part of the difference now.
They reach a conclusion. So you get that satisfied, and the overall, and each one of those subplots advances the overall through line, or they're connected in some way. But yet at that size, you don't need filler because you're not trying to bulk it up to arbitrarily make it to 22.
A lot of times everything you're saying, the only concern that I run into is that when you extend the seasons, from 10 episodes or 6 episodes, right now the audience has become accustomed to basically having nearly feature quality on every episode. I don't mean from a plot standpoint. I mean from a production standpoint.
Yeah.
And they complain about CGI and
how many episodes were in a season of The Expanse?
I never had
what was it? I think it was like 13? 10 or 13?
Yeah.
I think it differed per season. I think some of the
the
last two were 10,
as long as it needed to be.
Yeah.
So I just want to note something. So it isn't a show; it's a video game. But it strikes me like the length of it and how the stages are broken up. It's a Star Fox game. The plot is very Star Trek-esque, where this Borg-like species is just assimilating everything. So anyway, it had 10 stages, and each was treated almost like an episode of a series. Now, what's funny is the first 5. The first half of it felt a little more lighthearted and episodic. Like we were still learning about what was really going on. And then the second half was much darker and much more, connected. So it's like the first half of it felt misleadingly, kind of like an episodic ROM. But then the last half of it felt much more, I'm not sure what, much more serialized, much more movie-like. And then it just kept like building and building to this climax. And I thought that was a really neat format. And I think that's one way you could do a season of something.
Well, shifting gears is a good way to do it. Yeah,
and I am the best job of all Star Trek in the filler episodes. When you look at the filler episodes on DS9, it's in the pale moonlight.
Exactly.
Just
I love hanging out with Quark's
you don't really
family.
have to pay attention to it.
Well, and my favorite example of that is the X-Files. Because to me, almost all of my favorite episodes of the X-Files are the ones that have nothing to do with the alien arc. They're the Monster of the Week shows. They're the Monster of the Week shows, and it's like, and I mean, for the first the X-Files for probably about the first 5 or 6 seasons, I was into the alien arc. Right, they kept it going well enough that and then it's like, okay, you really need to just wrap this up, and they dragged it out to the end of the series.
Really on that one a long way.
And it's like,
in part because Chris Carter didn't know where he was going.
True, exactly.
But I mean, and even like when they did those 2 revival seasons a couple years ago, and it was like they would start and end with like alien arc stuff, and those episodes are kind of whatever, and then in the middle they would do standalone episodes, and those are all pretty good. And it's like you watch the season premiere and you're like, oh, why'd they bring this show back? Why'd they bother? And then you get into the middle of it and you're like, oh, this is actually fun. It's fun to see them investigating cases, and these are interesting stories. And then you get to the end of it and it's like, oh, here's the alien stuff again.
It's a long time since I've watched the X-Files. My favorite episode may have been the Cops crossover.
Oh, that was a good one.
Oh,
that was a good one.
Yes,
that was a very good episode.
And Joe speak.
Okay, since we brought the topic up of like a show that's like serialized but doesn't episodic. My favorite anime of all time is Ghost in the Shell, specifically Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex, as it were, where it's like they actually tell you in the like title screen, as it were, these are complex episodes that will involve the Laughing Man incident in the first season, but then there are like standalone episodes as well, so you automatically know which one is actually part of the overall story arc and which ones are the episodic ones. And some of the best episodes are honestly the episodic ones too as well. However, what's interesting is that they also did like put a DVD together of just old complex episodes. So if you just want to watch all the episodes instead of like going to Wikipedia, it's like, all right, which one's the complex episodes? Okay, we gotta go to 1 and then 5. And like, no, you can watch it all in like one mini series as were. So I thought that was like kind of cool. And like the second gig did that as well with individual episodes and then like dual episodes, and then I forgot too much. But so I just want to mention that.
Yeah, I will say. Oh, whoops.
I was say, and the show that I think, I cannot think of a show that did like that concept better than Avatar: The Last Airbender, where there was so much more filler in the early thing because the stakes were lower, and even like the filler episode, like 1 or 2 episodes right before the end, where it's essentially a play of what happened up to that point.
Yes.
Ends with the play ending with the team being defeated and just leaving, just annihilated, feeling like, oh no, what we're doing impossible? It's like tonally it fits so well. The writers in that show were so good.
Nice. One of the things that and of course I love to harp on B5. But I was thinking about what Nick said.
Keep harping, bro. Keep harping.
Is how if you look at like the first half of the first season, it's very much like Nick was talking about the first half of that game series, where it's like and you think about it, the first 4 or 5 episodes, how many of them ended with Jakar going, and
Hogan.
I would have gotten away with it. It wasn't for these meddling kids, and the Raiders and all this. And you had all these tropes, and you thought, and you didn't know what you were going to get, and it seemed episodic. Yeah. And meanwhile, he's laying the groundwork for everything that's going to come, but you don't see it yet because it's couched in this kind of campy, almost kind of episodic thing, and then he springs the especially like it's really the one I forget the name of the episode where you first see his shadow ship. And because it's like Londo was trying to secure the eye, that was the Centauri relic, and
when the computer showed up, when Starfleet's computer showed up.
That's right, and you see the Raiders, and you see how the Raiders get involved, and then you see the Raider ship, and they've got the Centauri dude, and then the shadow ship shows up out of nowhere and blasts the Raiders, and you're like, holy fuck, what was that? And then from that point on, you're into the arc, but they spend really almost 2/3 of the season just doing that, just setting it up and doing
like a couple of cryptic conversations with the land.
You get cryptic conversations, all the stuff that, because this was a show probably with an eye toward rewatch. Before that became a possibility, but it was like they dropped their little things. Orville did a similar thing where you got to slide things past the guys that are going to greenlight it, and they can grab their head around. Oh, it's Star Trek, okay, or it's the Family Guy, and they let you go, and then you can start putting in the novel you want to write.
Right. You can start doing the show you wanted to do in the first place. Yeah.
I really hope there's another season of the Orville, because that last season was fucking phenomenal.
The last season was really good. Yeah, I mean, my feeling
Crazy Admiral though.
I don't know. My feeling about it is like, I mean, 3 seasons, especially in today's environment, is a pretty good run. So I wouldn't feel cheated if we didn't get any more. But the last season was so good that it would be like, oh man, if they want to make more, just let them make more.
I kind of am hoping that's how Disco goes out. Making us want to have another season.
I would love
and figuring out if Reese can say something.
Because I despite its numerous flaws and the things about it that are continually frustrating, I love Disco, and I would love for its last season to be the one where either they just abandon the serialized storytelling because they've never nailed it in 4 tries. They've never nailed it. Or they finally fucking nail it. This is the one we're like, oh no, we've got something this time, and we've got it blocked out just perfectly, and it's gonna, it's not gonna fall off a cliff after the first half, like season 4 did, because like season four was good, but it was like, in some ways it was the most like hair pulling season, because like they did like a mid-season break, and up to the mid-season break, I mean, they had it rocking and rolling. I was like, all right, they've got this, and then they came back from the break, and it was like, what the fuck happened? It just completely fell apart. And then they gathered it back up for the end. They finished strong. And I was like, okay, they finished strong. And overall, it wound up being a good season. But it was like, oh, you had it. You had it, and then you lost it. What happened?
What's the nature of episodic television, though? I mean, back when the original Star Trek was on the air, we had to go episode to episode because you never knew when the production was going to be done. You never knew when was going to be shown in. And it was kind of nice to have, a drop in and pick up from, you joined the game.
That's why Strange New Worlds, I think, has done so well. Is that, I mean, I'll make this point and then we'll wrap it up because we're past the hour. But I make this, and I touch on this in my video that's coming out this coming week too. Strange New Worlds, for as episodic as it is, and for all the praise that it gets for returning to a more episodic format after the other new Star Trek shows or the other new live action Star Trek shows have been so heavily serialized. Strange New Worlds does season-long storytelling pretty damn good because they know, because like the way they did it in this most recent second season, they drop a little hook at the end about the Gorn, that, oh, there's something cooking with the Gorn, and then they don't fucking mention it for the next 8 episodes. And then finally in episode 10, that other shoe drops and it comes to the forefront and it's like, okay, now this is what this is about. And to me, like, if that's all you have, that's how you do that. You don't try to stretch 2 episodes of story into 10 episodes. You say, okay, we'll start it here, we'll end it here, and we'll fill in the gap with stuff that's about other stories.
Like butter spread over too much toast, right?
Yeah. Is that Tolkien?
That was Bilbo.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
The late J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yeah. One thing real quick back on the Orville real fast.
Please.
Another thing, because I love the show, but on top of it, it's another one of those shows that somehow right-wingers like and don't complain about it being woke, and I'm like, there's a whole ongoing arc, 3-season arc about a trans character and a whole species where they're basically inverted, and it's like, this is like one of the most woke shows I've ever seen, and yet they totally miss it.
But it's inverted, so they don't get it.
Yeah,
it's like, y'all know. I mean, there's all kinds of problems to have with Seth MacFarlane, but like, y'all know he's a fucking progressive, right?
Right.
It's not. He's not a right. He's all the right wingers who love the show. It's like, he's not one of you.
Right.
Okay. There's things to criticize him for the left, for sure, but like, he's not one of you assholes. He's mostly on the right side of this, and he's clearly trying to tell these stories in a progressive, like positive, inclusive way. And the fact that, but it's not, why? Because it's not new Star Trek, and it's like, oh, there's not a black woman in the
it might be a pigment and chromosome issue. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like that country singer that came out. He had that song. Richmond, Northern Virginia, small town. And he came out and said, yeah, the Republicans, no, I'm singing about the guys on that stage. Like, don't use me as your anthem because I'm not you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
And in that example, though, his message in that song is very muddled, and it's difficult to understand why people would be confused.
That was the first thought I had. I thought, I thought, good for you that you're not, that you're sort of trying to make it clear, like, oh, I wasn't trying to appeal to you assholes. But you should have done a better job writing your song.
Well, actually, somebody said that I think that he actually did articulate like all these conflicting views that a lot of people kind of have in their head. Where they haven't thought about it holistically, but they've got, there's this problem, and then there's this problem, and they've kind of got a bag of them.
Well, and think about it, right-wing people, right-wing populist, rank and file. There's a lot of class warfare.
Built in.
They see the class warfare, but they don't get that they're voting for the people who are waging it.
Right. Right.
They don't realize that they are class traitors in the
running right past, running smack dab into the point and missing it. And still.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
They
It's like they call it like the excuse that is often made for Trump supporters, that economic anxiety, working class anxiety, and it's like, yeah, but they're voting for the people that are the direct cause of it.
But you're quizzling in the class war. I don't know why you don't understand that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. I'm going to wrap up the show. Thank you, everybody. First and foremost, thanks to everybody who is here with me right now, because these are all patrons and channel members who are supporters of my thing that I do here on YouTube. So thanks to all of you guys for being here. And thanks to all of you for watching. If you are also a patron or a member, if you would like to support what I do, you can become a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, or become a member just by clicking the join button. And this is something we do once a month. And if this looks like fun, come on along. If you want to become a patron or a member, you are more than welcome to join us on the last Sunday of every month.
Next Patreon and member hangout will be September 24th. So for those of you who want to be prepared, mark it on your calendar. That will be that's something.
Our unofficial producer
on the ball.
I mean, I haven't even looked at the calendar yet. I'm like, sometimes, actually, usually I at least figure it out a week before, but sometimes I'll be doing something on a Saturday, like late in the month, and I'll all of a sudden like start up in a panic, and I'll like check the calendar, like, oh fuck, is that tomorrow?
Yes.
That has happened a few times. We're like, oh shit, the hangout's tomorrow.
Should I remind you on a Friday or a Saturday if I
don't think that'll be necessary. Well, because I mean, it's mostly just a mental thing. Because honestly, like we just hang out and talk. It's not like
I don't have to prepare for this.
Yeah, but it's just you have to get into the emotional space of, oh, I'm doing that tomorrow.
Are we still live?
No, we're not. Hang on, we're still live. Okay, so bye everybody.
Bye.
Bye all.